In 2003, Lamborghini promised an end to supercar headaches, a daily driver V10, German precision, and their first true bestseller. More than 14,000 Gallardos rolled off the line, marking a new era. But buried in those early vehicle identification numbers is a side of the story few owners expected: transmission failures, relentless electrical bugs, and repair bills that rival the price of another car. How did the car that saved Lamborghini become a scandal so few want to talk about? The truth begins with how much they risked to survive. In the early 2000s, Lamborghini's new message echoed across glossy magazines and auto shows. The Gallardo was engineered to be driven every day. No more temperamental exotics, no more supercar drama, just a V10 masterpiece tamed by German oversight. Audi's arrival at Sant Agata Bolognese brought not only fresh capital, but a promise of reliability. Press releases boasted about aluminum space frames, advanced electronics, and a car that could handle both city traffic and winding mountain passes. Journalists at the Geneva Motor Show repeated the company line, "Here was a Lamborghini you could trust to start in the morning, rain or shine." The Gallardo's launch campaign leaned hard into this idea. Official brochures described a supercar that rewards its owner every single day, while executives highlighted Audi's influence on build quality and engineering discipline. Test drives in 2003 and 2004 praised the car's smoothness, its docile manners at low speeds, and its user-friendly e-gear paddle system. Reviewers marveled at the newfound refinement, comparing the Gallardo's interior fit and finish to high-end German sedans. Dealers assured buyers that the Gallardo was as happy crawling through city traffic as it was roaring down the autostrada. Even the maintenance intervals were pitched as sensible: oil changes every 5,000 miles, clutch checks at 40,000 miles. For many, this was the first Lamborghini that didn't seem to demand a race team's attention just to survive a commute. Audi's reputation for dependability became a selling point, woven into every interview and showroom conversation. The Gallardo, they insisted, was not just a leap forward in performance, but a revolution in usability. The daily drivable supercar had arrived. Beneath the optimism, though, a subtle caution lingered. Some early reviewers wondered aloud whether a car bred for the track could really serve as a reliable companion for the weekday grind. The marketing was clear. The reality, as thousands of new owners would soon discover, was far more complicated. Production at Sant Agata Bolognese entered a new era with the Gallardo. For decades, Lamborghini had built cars in tiny batches, hundreds per year at most, each a rare sight on the road. That changed almost overnight. By 2013, more than 14,000 Gallardos had rolled off the line, a figure that dwarfed every previous model combined. The scale of this shift can be traced through the Gallardo's VINs. Early cars from 2003 carried low sequence numbers, with the first 400 or so representing the initial batch. By the end of 2004, that number had jumped to around 1,700. Lamborghini kept ramping up, reaching annual peaks of 1,200 to 1,500 cars between 2004 and 2006. The VIN blocks from those years form a dense cluster, thousands of nearly identical cars, many sharing the same early engineering solutions and, as service records would later show, the same vulnerabilities. This was not just a matter of quantity. The Gallardo's rapid production increase put pressure on suppliers and assembly lines. Graziano gearboxes, Vallejo clutches, Magneti Marelli electronics, all delivered in volumes the factory had never handled before. The early VINs, especially from 2003 and 2004, are now infamous among specialists for their concentration of post-warranty repairs. Mechanics and buyer's guides point to these first-generation cars as the most likely to need major work, with clutch replacements and e-gear actuator failures surfacing far more often than in later builds. Some repair shops estimate that 70% of early clutch jobs come from these initial VIN ranges. By 2006, Lamborghini had pushed past 4,500 Gallardos, with incremental updates filtering into production. Improved clutches, revised hydraulic actuators, and software tweaks began to appear, but the early cars, especially those built before mid-2005, remained a distinct group in the service bay logs. For owners, the difference between a 2004 VIN and a 2008 LP560 could mean the difference between routine maintenance and a five-figure repair bill. This concentration of early cars produced in unprecedented numbers set the stage for what followed. When mechanical problems began to surface, they did not just affect a handful of rare exotics, they rippled through a growing community of owners, each with a car that shared the same DNA. The Gallardo's success, measured in thousands of units and tightly packed VIN sequences, would soon collide with the realities of high-volume supercar engineering. Inside the engineering offices at Sant'Agata, the Gallardo's transmission was a puzzle with no easy solution. Lamborghini needed a gearbox that could handle nearly 500 horsepower from the new V10, deliver lightning-fast shifts for a new generation of drivers, and survive the demands of daily use. The answer came from Graziano Trasmissioni, an Italian supplier known for building gearboxes for high-performance cars. Graziano's 6-speed unit, already proven in other exotics, offered the compact size and lightweight Lamborghini needed to keep the Gallardo agile. But it wasn't just about raw strength. The Graziano box could be paired with an electro-hydraulic actuation system, what Lamborghini would call e-gear. This setup promised Formula One-style paddle shifts, a crucial selling point for buyers lured by the idea of cutting-edge technology. A former engineer recalls the meetings with Graziano's team. The brief was clear: prioritize performance, keep weight low, and meet aggressive cost targets set by Audi's accountants. Every component was scrutinized. The electro-hydraulic circuit, the heart of e-gear, used a compact pump, a small fluid reservoir, and a series of hoses routed tightly around the gearbox. Actuators and solenoids were chosen for speed, not for long-term durability. The system could bang off shifts in under 200 milliseconds, but the tolerances were razor-thin. Underneath the car, the transmission and its control unit, a rectangular metal box bolted to the housing, handled every shift command, every clutch engagement, every adaptation to the driver's style. Supplier choice was a balancing act. Graziano's box was lighter than most rivals, shaving precious kilograms from the rear axle. But cost constraints meant Lamborghini couldn't demand custom heavy-duty parts. The e-gear's hydraulics shared DNA with systems used in less powerful cars, pushed to their limits by the Gallardo's torque. The engineer describes long nights spent reviewing wear data, watching pressure curves spike during hard launches and rapid downshifts. Early prototypes revealed a problem. The actuators and pump, designed for occasional use, now faced relentless punishment in city traffic and on-track sprints. The clutch release bearing, a critical link between the hydraulic circuit and the clutch itself, was another pain point. Designed for smooth engagement, it struggled with repeated stop-and-go driving, a scenario the original Murcielago or Diablo never had to worry about. As production numbers climbed, the pressure only increased. Graziano had to deliver thousands of units, everyone tested to the same spec, but assembled at a pace the supplier had never attempted. Batch-to-batch variation crept in. Some gearboxes left the factory with perfect tolerances, others developed leaks or shifting quirks within the first year. The electro-hydraulic system's compactness, once a design triumph, became a liability in the heat of real-world use. Hoses routed near hot exhausts baked over time, seals wore out, and the pump sometimes lost pressure under repeated load. The engineer admits, in hindsight, that some of these compromises were understood from the start. Lamborghini's mandate was clear: bring the Gallardo to market fast, hit the price point, and deliver the driving experience buyers expected. The hope was that most owners would never push the system to its breaking point, or at least not until after the warranty expired. Every design decision, from Graziano's gearbox to the electro-hydraulic actuators, reflected the tension between performance, cost, and durability. The vulnerabilities seated here would ripple through thousands of cars, setting the stage for the wear patterns and failures that soon filled service bays across the world. Every component inside the Gallardo's transmission and clutch assembly lived on a knife's edge. The original twin-plate organic clutch, sourced from Vallejo, was chosen for its smooth engagement and lightweight feel, perfect for quick shifts in city traffic. But organic friction material has limits. Under normal use, it can handle heat and pressure, but the Gallardo's V10 produced nearly 500 horsepower, and the e-gear system delivered each shift with a jolt that sent temperatures soaring. In stop-and-go traffic, the clutch would slip repeatedly, never fully disengaging from the flywheel. Each half-engaged start or slow crawl through a parking garage created micro-bursts of heat. Over time, these moments stacked up, baking the clutch plates and breaking down the organic lining. Thermal diagrams from independent specialists show how quickly temperatures could spike. A single hard launch or an uphill start in first gear could push surface temperatures past 350 degrees Celsius. Once the clutch overheated, the friction material began to glaze, a process that made the next engagement even harsher and less predictable. The problem compounded if drivers left the car in gear at idle, a habit carried over from traditional manuals. In the Gallardo, this kept the clutch partially engaged, grinding away even when the car was not moving. The owner's manual quietly advised always selecting neutral at stops, but the warning was easy to miss, buried in small print. The release bearing, another critical part, was also pushed to its limits. Designed to handle smooth, brief engagements, it now faced extended periods of pressure as the e-gear's hydraulics modulated clutch action in traffic. Early bearings, especially in 2003 and 2004 cars, showed signs of fatigue within just a few thousand miles. Service bulletins from independent shops documented cases where bearings failed long before the clutch itself, sometimes seizing and causing catastrophic damage to the pressure plate and flywheel. The result was a chain reaction. A worn bearing increased clutch drag, which amplified heat, which then accelerated wear across the entire assembly. Engine stress followed a similar path. The 5.0-liter V10 ran hot by design, relying on precise oil pressure and constant airflow to keep temperatures in check. But every missed shift, every moment of clutch slip, sent shockwaves through the drivetrain. Weak conrod bearings in early engines, especially those built before mid-2005, became a known risk. When clutch slip or bearing drag forced the engine to work harder, oil temperatures climbed, and any drop in pressure could spell disaster. Mechanics found that even a brief episode of overheating, sometimes just a few minutes stuck in traffic, could leave lasting scars from scored flywheels to pitted bearings. The wear patterns were not obvious at first. Most owners noticed only subtle changes, a rougher shift, a faint burning smell, a warning light that flickered and then disappeared. But inside, the damage accumulated. By the time the car reached 10,000 miles, some clutches were already on borrowed time. Invoices from specialist shops tell the story in blunt numbers. Full clutch and bearing replacements often ran into 5 figures, with labor accounting for much of the cost. Each job required hours of disassembly, careful inspection of every hydraulic hose and actuator, and the hope that no heat damage had spread to the gearbox itself. Owner behavior played a decisive role. Drivers who followed the manual's advice, selecting neutral at stops, avoiding repeated launches, and keeping up with oil changes, sometimes saw clutches last 30,000 miles or more. But even careful owners could fall victim to the system's narrow margin for error. The Gallardo's promise of everyday supercar usability rested on a foundation that, under the surface, was constantly at war with the laws of physics. Heat and pressure did not care about marketing slogans. In the end, the true cost of ownership became clear, not in the showroom, but on the shop floor. It was measured in invoices and hours of labor. A Gallardo owner describes the first sign of trouble as a flicker on the dashboard, a yellow warning light, sometimes paired with a chime, sometimes just a silent glow. It might be the transmission, the battery, or an ambiguous engine alert. The car keeps driving, but the sense of confidence starts to slip. On a warm afternoon, another driver recalls the e-gear refusing to shift out of first gear at a stoplight, forcing a restart in the middle of traffic. One owner remembers the doors refusing to unlock after a short grocery run, sensors confused by a voltage drop that no mechanic could trace for weeks. Stories from owner forums and specialist shops repeat the same handful of symptoms. Sudden, unexplained warning lights, sometimes for the brakes, sometimes for the transmission, sometimes for both. The car might start perfectly one morning, only to refuse the next, immobilized by a failed sensor or a glitch in the immobilizer circuit. Some Gallardos develop a habit of flashing every warning at once, a Christmas tree effect that can vanish with a restart or linger for days. A common culprit is heat. Wiring harnesses routed too close to the exhaust can bake over time, their insulation brittle and prone to shorting. One technician describes finding melted connectors behind the engine, where a few degrees too many turn plastic brittle and expose bare wire. In early cars, the brake light switch is notorious for causing chaos. When it fails, the car's computers lose track of whether the driver is pressing the pedal, disabling the starter, or locking the transmission in gear. Owners have learned to keep spares in the glove box, swapping them roadside like a ritual. Electrical gremlins rarely announce themselves with a clear cause. A sensor might fail in the rain, or after a long drive, or for no reason at all. The e-gear system, dependent on dozens of signals, can misfire if just one voltage reading drops out of range. Some owners report spending hours hooked up to diagnostics, chasing phantom faults that disappear as soon as the scan tool is unplugged. The result is frustration, a car that promises everyday usability but delivers unpredictability. For many, these glitches are more than an inconvenience. They erode trust, turning every drive into a question mark, every dashboard glow into a potential disaster. A Lamborghini specialist connects the diagnostic tool to the Gallardo's onboard diagnostics port. The laptop screen lights up with a stream of fault codes and live data. The technician scrolls through the system logs, eyes narrowing on two codes that appear again and again, P0720 and P2227. P0720 signals an output speed sensor failure. P2227 points to barometric pressure sensor issues deep in the car's electronics. These are not isolated glitches. In the Gallardo community, both codes have become shorthand for trouble. P0720 means the transmission cannot reliably sense wheel speed, sometimes locking the car in gear or refusing to shift. P2227 can trigger limp mode or random warning lights across the dashboard. The scan tool history shows a pattern. Over the last year, this particular car has logged both codes a dozen times, usually after long drives or heavy traffic. The specialist notes a spike in electrical faults during hot weather, matching owner reports from forums and service records. In the United States, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration lists 27 separate complaints involving Gallardo electrical malfunctions, many referencing the same codes, with symptoms ranging from sudden loss of power to complete immobilization. Service records from independent shops echo these findings. Early Gallardos, especially those built before 2006, show a higher frequency of sensor and wiring failures, often requiring hours of troubleshooting to isolate the cause. The technician runs a clutch wear test, then triggers the e-gear's actuator exercise mode. The hydraulic pump whirs, the shift forks click through their sequence, but the scan tool records a brief voltage drop, another warning sign buried in the data. The specialist explains that intermittent faults like these are notoriously difficult to diagnose. A failing speed sensor might work for weeks before cutting out in heavy traffic. A weak ground behind the fuse box can mimic a dozen unrelated problems. Each time the car is restarted, the codes clear temporarily, only to return under the same conditions. In the shop's logbook, Gallardo after Gallardo returns with the same complaints: warning lights, stubborn transmissions, electrical ghosts. The scan tool's printout does not just confirm the owner's frustration, it validates a growing body of evidence. The Gallardo's promise of everyday reliability is undermined by a digital paper trail, one fault code at a time. A single invoice can tell the story better than any press release. In the spring of 2006, a Gallardo owner with a 2004 VIN stepped into the service department expecting a routine check. Instead, he was handed a bill that would become infamous among early Gallardo owners. The repair total soared past $25,000. The breakdown ran for pages: e-gear actuator replacement, hydraulic flush, new clutch assembly, release bearing, and hours upon hours of labor. Each line item came with its own sting. The e-gear actuator alone cost more than $7,000. The clutch kit was another $4,500. Labor charges dwarfed both, with technicians logging more than 20 hours just to drop the transmission, diagnose the hydraulic leaks, and test every sensor for signs of heat damage. The owner's expectations had been shaped by glossy brochures and Audi's promise of reliability. But the reality, stamped in black ink on dealer letterhead, was that the Gallardo's engineering compromises were not just theoretical, they were brutally expensive. The invoice listed parts numbers and technician notes, each one a reminder that the car's high-strung components were never meant for the daily grind. Hydraulic fluid seeped past worn seals, the actuator struggled to hold pressure, and the clutch, designed for lightweight performance, had baked itself into oblivion after just 12,000 miles of mixed driving. The service advisor explained the situation with practiced calm. The e-gear system, he said, was a marvel of technology until it was not. Early hydraulic pumps and actuators, built for speed and compactness, had a habit of developing leaks once the car left the warranty window. The clutch's organic friction material, perfect for smooth engagement, simply could not survive the heat of stop-and-go traffic or repeated hard launches. The release bearing, meant to last tens of thousands of miles, had worn down to the metal. Each failure fed the next, and by the time the car limped into the shop, the damage was widespread. For the owner, the shock was not just the total, it was the sense of betrayal. Audi's reputation for dependability had been a selling point. The Gallardo was supposed to be the supercar without the drama, a car that could be driven to work and back without fear. But with a single service bill, that illusion vanished. The invoice, authenticated and itemized, became a warning passed quietly among owners and would-be buyers. Forum threads dissected every charge, every part number, searching for ways to avoid the same fate. Some called it bad luck, others pointed to design flaws, but the numbers did not lie. This was not an isolated story. Across the country, early Gallardo owners faced the same reckoning. The promise of affordable Lamborghini ownership collided with the hard math of exotic car maintenance. A $25,000 repair bill on a car less than 3 years old was more than a financial hit. It was a wake-up call. The Gallardo's reputation, once burnished by Audi's marketing, now carried a shadow. Owners learned to scan invoices for signs of trouble, to read between the lines of service notes, and to brace for the moment when the next warning light would flicker to life. The true cost of early Gallardo ownership was not just measured in dollars, but in trust lost and expectations reset. A service manager at a high-end dealership sits behind a desk littered with Gallardo diagnostic reports. Each folder tells a similar story: a warning light, a complaint about rough shifting, a note about the car refusing to engage a gear. The first step is always the same. Connect the Leonardo diagnostic tool, check for stored fault codes, and scroll through the driver history log. The system records every launch, every missed shift, every moment the clutch slipped too long in traffic. Even a single hard launch stands out in the data, giving the dealership an easy out when explaining failures. The manager says aggressive driving can shorten clutch life dramatically. Officially, Lamborghini's corporate line remains optimistic. A spokesperson points to the owner's manual, which calls for neutral at every stop and cautions against repeated full-throttle starts. In press statements, the company highlights incremental updates and stresses that the majority of owners enjoy years of trouble-free driving. When pressed about recurring e-gear problems, the answer is careful. A spokesperson said the Gallardo's advanced transmission system requires proper use and regular maintenance to deliver peak performance. Automotive journalists who covered the Gallardo's launch recall a different tone in their inboxes. In 2004, press cars arrived with fresh clutches and perfectly tuned e-gear systems. Reviews in major magazines praised the technology, rarely digging into long-term durability. When early owners began reporting failures, the story stayed mostly confined to internet forums and specialist shops. Mainstream outlets, reliant on manufacturer access for test drives and event invites, hesitated to amplify complaints. A journalist from a leading car magazine remembers the subtle pressure: if you made too much noise about clutch wear or electrical issues, you might not get the next press car. The official recall record for the Gallardo is thin. In 2018, Lamborghini issued a limited recall for 1,152 cars built between 2010 and 2013. Not for e-gear or clutch failures, but to reflash engine software so warning lamps would alert drivers to critical problems. Earlier models, the ones most prone to transmission and electrical gremlins, never saw a broad recall. Instead, technical service bulletins trickled out to dealers, quietly updating software or recommending new procedures for diagnosing hydraulic leaks and sensor faults. Owners whose cars failed outside the warranty window were often told the problem was either driving style or simple wear and tear. Dealers, caught between factory guidance and frustrated customers, walked a fine line. Diagnostics could reveal abuse, giving them grounds to deny goodwill repairs. But even careful owners, with logs showing gentle use, sometimes face the same expensive repairs. The service manager explains that while the diagnostic logs can be helpful, they also serve as protection for the brand, evidence that can be used to push blame away from design and onto the person behind the wheel. Journalists who continued to follow the Gallardo story noticed a pattern. Negative coverage rarely made headlines. Most magazines focused on the car's performance, its design, and its sales success. Only specialist outlets and owner forums chronicled the full scope of reliability issues. The result was a carefully managed narrative. Lamborghini's bestseller remained a symbol of progress, while the details of its vulnerabilities stayed largely in the shadows. For the average buyer, the only warning came too late, after the diagnostic tool had already logged the evidence and the service advisor had already printed the bill. A Gallardo specialist runs his finger along a list of recent sales, pausing at the early VINs from 2003 and 2004. These cars, once the pride of Lamborghini's modern revival, now trade hands at a noticeable discount, often 10 to 15% below their later siblings. Market analysts point to a clear pattern, and buyers have grown wary of the repair risks tied to those early build years. A Gallardo from the first production wave might look identical to a 2008 model in photos, but the service history tells a different story. The difference in value is not just cosmetic, it reflects years of invoices, forum warnings, and specialist advice echoing through the used supercar market. A market analyst explains that depreciation for early Gallardos follows a predictable curve. The first few years see a sharp drop, then values plateau unless a big repair hits, in which case the car can lose another chunk of its worth overnight. Cars with documented clutch replacements or upgraded e-gear actuators tend to hold their value better, while those with mystery gaps in their records sit longer on dealer lots. The analyst points to auction data. A 2004 coupe with original clutch and spotty maintenance history recently hammered for nearly 20% less than a similar 2008 LP560, despite similar mileage. Buyers and dealers alike have learned to scan VYNs and service logs for red flags, especially in models built before 2006. For anyone considering a Gallardo, the checklist has become almost ritual. A specialist mechanic lays out the essentials. Start with a full diagnostic scan, looking for recurring fault codes like Pu720 or P227. Inspect the service records for evidence of regular oil changes every 5,000 miles and clutch checks at 40,000. Ask for proof of hydraulic fluid flushes and actuator replacements. Missing documentation on these items is a warning sign. The mechanic recommends a compression test on early 5-liter engines, especially those built before mid-2005, to catch weak conrod bearings before they turn catastrophic. Suspension bushings, cooling hoses, and electrical connectors near the exhaust should all be checked for heat damage. The advice from experts is straightforward. Do not be seduced by a low sticker price. The cheapest Gallardo on the market often comes with the most expensive surprises. Preventative service is the key to long-term ownership. Upgraded clutches, revised actuators, and regular fluid changes can extend the life of even the most vulnerable early cars. Some specialists offer pre-purchase inspections tailored to Gallardos, complete with printouts of clutch wear percentages and actuator pressure tests. For buyers set on an early VIN, a 15% discount off comparable later models is the minimum to offset the risk. For those willing to pay more, a well-documented LP560 from 2008 or newer offers peace of mind and stronger resale prospects. The Gallardo's legacy in the used market is complicated. Its V10 soundtrack and Lamborghini badge still turn heads, but ownership rewards the well-prepared. The checklist is no longer optional. It is the difference between living the supercar dream and inheriting someone else's repair nightmare. As the market matures, buyers are arming themselves with information, and the smartest ones are listening to the specialists who have seen every invoice, every warning light, and every hard lesson written in oil and hydraulic fluid. Today, the Gallardo's history shadows every so-called accessible supercar. As luxury brands chase higher sales, reliability remains an unresolved promise. Just ask Gallardo owners still facing 5-figure bills for failed e-gear systems. The line between dream and compromise is thinner than ever. In a market obsessed with numbers, it's not just speed or price that matters, it's trust. What are we really buying when exclusivity goes mainstream? Share your experience or thoughts below.